The streets are more than a colloquialism for being outside of your home. The streets are an influential institution that affects the minds of millions of people. Since it is an unconventional establishment, it is often overlooked, underexamined, and underestimated. Those who do not live street-orientated lives often forget how significant street culture is to marginalized black males. Over the last few decades, black culture and street culture have become conflated. Many believe black culture and street culture are the same, which is a false narrative passively supported by euphemisms like the word urban when used regarding black folks. People today obscure and mistake street activities, behaviors, attitudes, and values with blackness or black culture. To counteract this confusion about African American culture, we must understand the institution of the streets and its significance. It is important to analytically explore the social construct of the streets without the contempt that comes with respectability politics. A careful examination of the streets with a pragmatic approach may provide insight that assists in slowing the rapid development and growth of the streets as an alternate institution. The streets are a non-traditional institution that socializes people, similar to the traditional institutions like the family, education system, and the church. For example, within the family, parents teach their children what they believe are acceptable attitudes, values, and social behaviors. We commonly refer to this process as being raised. Similarly, real-world and media exposure to street-orientated individuals and activities can perform the same function as the parent within the family. The rapper Zero acknowledged this reality in the song Soldier Story off Scarface's Emeritus album, where he sings, quote, "The streets always been my daddy, and mommy is the county jail," end quote. In a physical sense, the streets are a network of public social settings in which predominantly those of working class and low socioeconomic status congregate. Examples are street corners, vacant lots, bars, clubs, parks, and public recreation areas. Social settings of the streets are gathering places for black males to assemble and partake in brotherhood rites of passage and activities. The streets are a product of the American social structure created as a cultural adaptation to intergenerational challenges confronting black Americans. Essential institutions like the political, economic, educational, and criminal justice historically have been managed by white men who prevented black men from achieving equity. Because it is non-conventional, many of us overlook the institution of the streets and how it plays a role in facilitating the socialization of youth and young adults. The majority of working class and low socioeconomic blacks are resilient and live hard-working, law-abiding lives in response to the adverse structural conditions of systemic racism in the United States. However, there is a significant number of blacks who lack the resiliency and resources that are needed to cope with the adverse circumstances they encounter. As a result, this population of blacks is inclined to seek respect and social acclaim by creating identities as individuals in the social construct of the streets. Within this marginalized population, adolescent children learn how obtaining social recognition and respect involves developing the ability to navigate life in the streets. Due to historical and current patterns of white supremacy and gender oppression, Black males construct masculine identities that emphasize toughness, sexual conquest, and street hustling as a means of coping with frustrated masculinity. Systemic exclusion from conventional ways of achieving identity and status as a man in the legitimate social structure enhances interest in institutionalization of the streets as an alternate stage to pursue individual and social importance. As a result, a rite of passage to adulthood for many African American males has become to construct masculine identities that are respected and feared by other men in and outside of the social construct of the streets. The existence of the streets as an institution is also the product of insufficient support systems as well as community tolerance of dysfunctional behavior and lack of organized resistance to Black males who adopt street-related values, norms, and roles. Black males who are at most at risk for street-related violence as men have obtained little to no training for healthy manhood lifestyles. Their departure from masculine accountability or disarray about what it means to be a man under oppression has pushed them to accept a vague, malformed, self-destructive manifestation of masculinity. Hip-hop culture has influenced the development and transmission of street culture socialization. Before the emergence of hip-hop, exposure to the streets and socialization to street culture involved investing time and energy in physically being present in street settings that provided opportunities for street-related lessons. Hip-hop music, music videos, street life films, television shows, and the internet have provided opportunities for exposure to street-related values, standards, roles, and activities without being present in street settings. Since the 90s, rappers have promoted the street lifestyle and provided audiences with images, attitudes, and pedagogy of street culture. Before the 90s, hip-hop music did not generally romanticize street lifestyles. Early rappers criticized street culture and informed listeners about the hazards associated with life in the streets. In the 80s, anti-drug use rap songs were commonplace, like Melly Mel's White Lines Don't Do It, General Kane's Crack-Killed Applejack, Kool Moe Dee's Monster Crack, MC Shan's Cocaine, and Public Enemy's Night of the Living Bassheads. Even though Schoolie D dropped what is considered the first gangster rap song, PSK, What Does It Mean, in 1985, rap music themes in the 80s were generally about dancing, having fun, and living healthy. Anti-street sentiment culminated in 1989 with the release of Self-Destruction by the Stop the Violence movement, founded by KRS-One. Arguably, the seeds of street-orientated rap sprouted roots in 1988 with the release of 4 influential albums: NWA, Straight Outta Compton, Eazy-E, Easy Does It, Ice-T, Power, and Too Short, Life Is Too Short. These 4 albums influenced a change in the overall tone of rap music. They introduced consumers to the masculine identities that form the heart of the manhood roles valued by Black males who seek recognition in the streets: the gangster, the player, and the hustler. Gangster rap vacated from earlier forms of rap described as socially conscious and more politically Afrocentric. Scholars agree that other rap forms reflected a generic concern for chronicling the Black experience, while gangster rap is specifically interested in the Black underclass in the ghetto. Since its pioneers are gangsters, gangster rap relates to the life experiences of the rappers themselves, whose lyrics portray gang and ghetto life from a criminal perspective. In the early 90s, concepts and visuals presented in hip-hop music began to depict individuals in street settings engaging in patterns of behavior associated with street culture. In addition, attitudes towards women started to become increasingly misogynistic. Artists like Queen Latifah took notice and penned lyrics like "Instinct leads me to another flow. Anytime I hear a brother call a girl a bitch or a hoe, trying to make a sister feel low, you know all of that gots to go." In the 90s, hip-hop became seen as an alternate way for marginalized Black males to achieve the American dream. Rap's economic opportunities became associated with a new street game, more legitimate than selling drugs or committing burglaries, and with better chances of success than being drafted into the NBA. The Notorious Big describes this outlook with the bar, "If it wasn't for the rap game, I'd probably have a key knee-deep in the crack game, because the streets are a shortstop. Either you're slinging crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot." Economic opportunities hip-hop provided to marginalized Black youth propelled artists, managers, producers, record executives, hip-hop personalities, journalists, and DJs into de facto role models. Even though hip-hop's origins are closely associated with street themes, it was a positive phenomenon that facilitated the introduction of remarkable creativity, incredible new sounds and rhythms, refreshingly innovative dance moves and styles, and MCs who rhythmically articulated phrases that rhymed, raising the energy of the party and capturing our imagination. Hip-hop is an Afro-diasporic culture that attempts to reconcile the experiences of marginalization and oppression within the cultural imperatives of African American and Caribbean history, identity, and community. The foundations of hip-hop culture started with what are called the core elements. Hip-hop culture's core elements are breaking, MCing, graffiti, and DJing. As hip-hop and street culture began to assimilate, aspects of the four elements started to change significance. The graffiti art inspired by Jean-Michel Basquiat and Al Diaz evolved into gang tagging. DJs, who in many cases were also the music producers, initially shared the stage with rappers, but began to fade out of the limelight by the late 90s. Out of hip-hop's MCing evolved rapping, which further evolved into gangster rap. Over time, dancing became less of a practice because it did not fit within the masculine identities respected by street-orientated men. Rappers who incorporated dancing into their brand became viewed as soft. In 1990, Ice Cube released his solo masterpiece, AmeriKKK's Most Wanted. The album starts with a skit of a corrections officer taking Ice Cube from his cell to the electric chair, where he is seated and strapped in. A voice says, "Do you have any last words?" Ice Cube replies, "Yeah, I have some last words. Fuck all y'all." Someone says switch, and the sound of electricity occurs with the voice saying, "Was America willing to maintain order, no matter what the cost?" Throughout AmeriKKK's Most Wanted, Ice Cube ingeniously paints literary pictures of street life while contesting the status quo's systemic oppression of blacks across the country. In The Nigga You Love to Hate, Ice Cube raps, quote, "You wanna sweep a nigga like me up under the rug. Kicking shit called street knowledge. Why more niggas in the pen than in college?" Even though Ice Cube has been considered a gangster rapper, he proclaimed to be a teacher of street knowledge who questioned why the amount of black men incarcerated exceeds the amount educated. Rap was a decisive medium in the manner that it raised mayhem with white middle-class collusion and complacency with institutionalized racism and white supremacy. Gangsta rap took it a step further and propelled white audiences into adopting black inflection and ghetto identification. Reaching white audiences was the hope of Def Jam Records CEO Russell Simmons. Simmons once stated, quote, "So maybe some kid in Beverly Hills listens to rap and gets a better idea of what some kids in Crenshaw are thinking, and as that kid in Beverly Hills grows up and goes to college, maybe he'll keep a little bit of that in his consciousness and maybe even grow up to do something about it."
As that golden era started to happen, 85 to 90, 91, you had a little more rounded picture of hip hop. You had so many different kinds of hip hop. You could really appreciate it as an entire culture. All right, everybody wasn't lyrical, but you had cats that was, everybody was lyrical, but they were lyrical in different ways. You had cats that were funny and lyrical, like Biz Markie, okay? You had cats that followed in the tradition of myself and Melly Mel, like Big Daddy Kane and Cool G Rap, all right? You had your Special Eds, you had your Kwame's, you had your Chubb Rocks, you had the ladies, okay? MC Light, Queen Latifah, all of them guys, you know what I mean? And then you had a conscious kind of hip hop as well. You had Poor Righteous Teachers, KRS-One, PE was getting ready to come into the fray, you know what I mean? So hip hop was a lot more conscious during that time. So not only did you have lyrical, like you had a certain quality that hip hop had taken on during the mid 80s to the 90s, which was cool because every group kind of fit in. Everybody was part of that. Nobody was like sucked and was just there. Everybody had made a contribution. And then, of course, the 90s came in, and there was too much consciousness going on in hip-hop at that time for the powers that be. So here comes gangster rap. All right, take off the medallions, you know what I mean? Stop all that peace and unity, and let's do some hoes and cocaine and gangbanging.
Did that bother you?
Yes, it did.
Really?
Yes, it did.
In 1991, NWA released their masterwork, This creation was consequential and became the first gangster rap album to achieve #1 on the Billboard 200. Its cover shockingly depicts the souls of the group members leaving their lifeless remains at a crime scene. The album provided its listeners with street-orientated masculine identities that reenact the rebelliousness, misogyny, and violence of street life. This album's incredible success further commercialized the use of the N-word in the mainstream vernacular, especially among black youth. The mainstreaming of the N-word due to its use in a musical work's title is similar to what Ernest Hogan accomplished with the word coon in 1895 with his consequential work, All Coons Look Alike to Me. In the eyes of many marginalized youth, society was going under, and gangster rappers became the new prophets, sounding warnings and speaking truth to power over synthetic drum sounds and samples. In 1992, Dr. Dre released his magnum opus, The Chronic. 1993, Snoop Dogg released his debut album, Doggy Style, becoming the second gangster rap album to reach #1 on the Billboard 200. Snoop became the first in a long line of rappers who would go on to socialize hip-hop listeners to gang life and culture. By 1994, All rappers embrace the masculine identities respected by those who are street-orientated. Any rapper who embraced masculine roles outside of those respected by street culture risked being deemed soft, corny, weird, square, or backpacker. Since the 1960s, research evidence has suggested exposure to violence in television, movies, video games, and the internet increases the risk of violent behavior on the viewer's part, similar to observing violence in the real world. Several theories hypothesize the mechanisms linking exposure to media violence with stimulated aggressive behavior in the observer. One such theory by Dr. Roel Huisman describes the short-term and long-term effects of exposure to violent content. The short-term effects are due to three things: the priming process, the arousal process, and the mimicry of specific behaviors. Priming is when external stimuli become linked to thoughts, emotions, or behaviors. Primed ideas make behaviors linked to them more likely to occur. When media violence primes aggressive ideas, aggression is more likely. Arousal is when the observer becomes excited due to viewing images portrayed by the mass media. Mimicry is the imitation of specific behaviors. Research has shown that humans and primate young have an innate tendency to mimic what they observe. Consequently, if children observe dysfunctional behavior, they are prone to mimic it. The long-term effects of exposure to violent content are desensitization, activation, and observational learning. Desensitization is when the observer becomes used to seeing violence due to multiple exposures. Initially, viewers of violence experience negative responses such as fear, accelerated heart rate, discomfort, and disgust. After repeated exposures, the mind and body become resilient to observing violent imagery, and negative responses significantly decrease. In some instances, desensitized viewers may begin to enjoy violence. The second long-term effect, activation, occurs when an individual becomes actively engaged in violence and becomes rewarded for participation. Observational learning is the third long-term effect and is a concept from Bandura's social cognitive theory. Observational learning occurs when an individual observes someone performing the behavior and witnesses the subsequent rewards or punishments. According to social cognitive theory, individuals can learn vicariously by watching others perform behaviors and receive rewards or punishments. In addition, viewers are more likely to learn behaviors if the individuals performing the behavior are attractive. Attraction comes from perceived similarities between the person doing the behavior and the observer, like age, gender, ethnicity, or similar life experiences. Physical features, wealth, and power are additional means of attraction. Studies have shown that appeal and attractiveness can override an observer's logic. Behavioral-based models and theories explain the mechanisms that allow street culture socialization to be a phenomenon. In addition, evidence from studies involving children exposed to violence provides additional insight that is not well respected. Children exposed to street culture mimic behaviors they see their role models do and increase their risk of exposure to street violence. Three masculine identities are the center of the most respected roles in street culture manhood. They are the gangster, the player, and the hustler. It is not uncommon for someone who adheres to street culture values to adopt a masculine persona that includes all three roles. These three masculine identities are used interchangeably depending on the situation and circumstance. The gangster role requires an individual to convey to other males toughness and the willingness to resort to violence to resolve disputes.
What I mean by gangster is somebody really trying to provide for their family, bro. Trying to beat up for their family. And if they get in the way, they gonna knock them off. They gonna whack them. Just because they killed you because you got in the way, or trying to feed their family, they don't mean they're a killer, bro. They mean they just took their business gangster way.
Being a gangster is win, lose, or maybe, man. Solid. To the gristle.
Challenges to an individual's commitment to reputation and toughness, known as testing someone's gangster, can result in deadly consequences. Individuals unable to convince others they possess a credible amount of toughness are at a risk of harassment and even assault. Black males who adhere to street culture and frequent street culture settings are hypersensitive to conducting themselves in a way that portrays themselves as real niggas, hard, or thugs. The gangster identity makes it easier to obtain a reputation for brutality, which is highly valued and yields respect from those who adhere to the standards of street culture. Sexual conquest is the central concern of the player.
Now tell me what's the difference between a pimp and a player? Because if you put them up against each other, a super pimp and a super player would cancel each other out on benefits, because the super pimp, he's he getting his toes done and shit. They rolling his joints. He in the bed. He don't even got to touch the remote control. You know what I'm saying? He got his hoes doing everything. The super player, he got a super fly date every night. He getting, his blowjobs from the baddest supermodels and the hottest chick in the club. Like he living a life. But if you just happen to be both, that's what I think you the guy with the skills. Cause look, take the pimp.
Okay, go.
He gotta stay hard on the bitch, man. He can't really ever let up and just have a good time with the bitch.
He can't enjoy his women?
Like you can, but that's like a treat for it. Like you can't really just every day just go out and have laughs and a drink with the bitch. The bitch gotta be hard on the boulevard getting money, and you gotta be on her like this is a business.
Right.
So he's basically not really like
enjoying his fruits of his
he
labor.
can't really indulge and be like every night like he hitting it, because it's the product. Like you can't just hit the product.
Okay.
So he got to be hard on the boulevard just like her. Get to work and he stay on her to be at work. But the player, on the flip side, you know what I'm saying, man, he gets to kind of enjoy the candy and the fun.
In the role of the player of women, sexual conquests become ritualized as a feature of masculinity. High amounts of sexual interactions while receiving material gains from women are praised and seen as manly. Within street culture, men who exhibit their mastery in being players of women receive enormous support and respect within the social construct of the streets. For the hustler, manhood is defined by desire and ability to acquire material gains.
Like, you can be a hustler. A hustler is anybody that gets up every single day and figures out a way to make good for themselves in this society. Hustler is anybody who has the drive to make something happen for himself. Just so happened for us being in the street, hustlers meant that we had to find a different way because there were no jobs available. The school system was shot. So we had to hustle to find a different way to make means for ourselves.
Current material goods and accumulated wealth also suggest a valued manhood identity. Street-orientated black males refer to the ideology of street hustling as the game. Within the game, street hustling activities may include selling drugs, selling stolen merchandise, pimping, or other street-related activities that provide profits. Black females seem to have not embraced street culture in the same manner as black men over the last few decades. However, Some women openly claim they want to be with men who orient their lives around the streets.
I like dudes that be looking roughed up. That's
no haircut, construction, like dirt,
nah,
rough
he can have a
hands.
haircut. He can have scratches on his face. He can have bullet wounds, like, you know.
War wounds. You
War
like a guy with
wounds.
war
I
wounds.
like shit like that. Or like he can have, you know, like just manly features.
This desire may be due to an attraction to the bad boy rather than the admiration for street culture orientated men. The population of street orientated females is far less than street orientated males. The factors that contribute to this gender difference are still not understood and need more research. One factor that may be at play could be the differences in how people parent girls from boys. Girls typically are more protected than boys. The extra safety precautions parents take to ensure a daughter's safety prevent most young girls from staying out after sundown. Over the last few decades, the impressive growth of African American enrollments in college has been due to females. According to the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education, Black women make up 63% of African Americans enrolled in college. Factors that influence females to attend college and avoid street culture appear to work differently regarding males. Another hypothesis suggests that Black men may be more susceptible than their female counterparts to the forces of family disruption, chaotic schools, drug abuse, crime, violence, racism, academic unpreparedness, street violence, premature parenthood, and the lack of role models. As William Raspberry from the Washington Post put it, quote, "Inner city conditions present a conspiracy of circumstances that almost impel young Black men into trouble." The substance of the streets as an institution is not in its physical locations, but instead the social function it serves, in which values, ideology, and manhood roles are always ritually expressed, reinvented, and embraced by the next generation of young men. The street settings and environments play a significant role in street culture socialization by providing the stage for masculine identities to interact in the presence of others who may serve to validate one's manhood. The institutions of the streets operate by a set of informal rules known as the code of the streets. The foundation of the code emphasizes respect. Additionally, obtaining a reputation for violence provides a particular level of respect and safeguards from future attacks. Sociologist Elijah Anderson created a reputation-based theory of crime to explain street crime in the absence of financial motivations. 6 factors are consistent with Anderson's reputation-based theory of crime. Number 1, violent crime often lacks a direct financial motive. Number 2, violent crime is often committed in public and in front of witnesses. Number 3, violent crime is more common among the young than among the old. Number 4, violent crime rates may vary sharply across small geographic spaces with the same economic fundamentals but different social fundamentals. 5, violent crime rates may vary sharply across essentially identical neighborhoods. 6, the variation is more significant for violent crimes than strictly financial crimes.
You would not tell on your worst enemy.
Nah, because when you get in the streets, Vlad, it's a code, you know, like he said with, I guess it's African American, like if you're a rat, you know what I'm saying, it's over. It's over. I guess we like Italians, fuck. If you rat, that's how we think, you know, if you rat, you a bitch.
The code of the streets is the rules for interpersonal conduct between individuals who adhere to street culture. It is the standard by which those who adhere to street culture evaluate their peers' commitment to the values that emphasize toughness, sexual conquest, and hustling. One such evaluation of an individual's commitment to street culture is to assess their adherence to living life without notifying law enforcement about crimes and individuals involved in them. The recent evolution in street culture ideology has given rise to public evaluations of an individual's commitment to street life called paperwork parties. In paperwork parties, individuals evaluate a peer's police reports, court transcripts, and additional documents for compliance with the street's no snitching policy. Perceived violations of this policy can lead to an individual becoming labeled a rat, decreasing their respect. Low respect in the streets decreases security and increases the likelihood of experiencing confrontations and violence. The streets are an integral social construct in the lives of many individuals. However, achieving the manhood identities valued by the streets comes with consequences. Centering a majority of time on street-related activities weakens traditional labor force attachments. Routine undertaking of street-related activities reduces individuals' access to information, training, and employment opportunities. Street-orientated lives bring about a self-imposed social isolation from traditional and legitimate social circles. Reoccurring participation in street activities makes street-orientated men less desirable as husbands and long-term partners. Partners of street-orientated individuals are more likely to experience family and relationship disruptions, high divorce rates, and low commitment. Mass participation in street culture has created a scarcity and shortage of marriageable black men. In addition, participation in street-related activities decreases a man's capacity to operate as a responsible father. Street-orientated males have a decreased attachment to family and a decreased capability to operate as accountable fathers. The objective of money and respect in the streets is a primary origin of conflict and violent confrontations concerning marginalized black males as perpetrators and victims. Violent confrontations among street-orientated black males comes as a result of adherence to the values, norms, and manhood roles respected by street culture. Women romantically involved with male partners who engage in street-related activities are at risk of experiencing domestic violence. Men who construct their identities and manhood roles from those cherished by the streets are likely to import pro-violence values, norms, and expectations into their intimate relationships. Black males who are street-oriented have a high chance of experiencing incarceration. As a result, incarceration has become recognized as an unavoidable aspect of reality and a rite of passage among black males. A weird anticipation of experiencing imprisonment exists among young black males, made trendy by pop culture's glamorized images of prison life. Several factors contribute to the growth of street culture ideology, one of which is the lack of pushback or criticism of its harm to the black community. Additionally, criticisms of street culture must be transparent and done without attacking black culture. The problem is not with black people. It is with the ideology and behaviors associated with street culture. The streets are an institution that plays a significant role in the Black American community. It has existed for a long time, but recently experienced rapid development institutionally. The blurring of black culture and street culture has made it difficult to find solutions, since it appears to some that the problem is with black culture. Black culture is not street culture. Black culture is survival, resiliency, and the continued struggle for freedom. Black culture is rhythm, dance, spiritual, familial, and communal. I hope that this video can spark some conversations around street culture that will be healthy and productive. Listen, I want to give a big shout out to all of the new subscribers that have subscribed to the channel. I really appreciate it. When I dropped that first video, the Gil Scott Huron Bluesologist video, about 2 weeks after that, I had 13 subscribers. And so to check it out and to see that we're well over 200 now, it's just been great, man. So thank you so much, everybody. The analytics are showing me that 95% of the people that watch my content are not subscribed to my channel. If you watch my content and you like this kind of content, listen, I really would appreciate it if you would subscribe to this channel. And with that being said, peace.